Well, good morning. Thanks for joining us. Today we're going to learn about commercial real estate development from someone who has done it very well. It's an interesting subject with an interesting guest, and it starts right now.
From TV6, this is The Ryan Report. Now, here's your host, Don Ryan.
Well, our guest this morning is Robert Mahaney, the president of Veridia Group in Marquette. What began more than 2 decades ago with a single retail building has evolved into a portfolio with over 50 projects valued at more than $250 million. Bob is a Michigan native who attended Albion College and later received a master's degree in international management from the Thunderbird School of Global Management in Glendale, Arizona. He's a founding member and past president of the Nicomenon Trail Network and also serves on the Northern Michigan University Board of Trustees. Bob, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Don. It's a pleasure to be here.
You know, I was thinking back, and I believe the first time we met was when I was with Cliffs Natural Resources, and you were part of a small group that was working to try to establish a ski trail from Ishpeming to Marquette for what would become the Nicomenon Trail Network. Do you recall that?
I sure do, Don, very clearly. John Momartz and myself and one or two others came out to Ishpeming. We had a meeting with you and some other important landowners and supporters, and we had the idea of maybe doing the race in 2 to 3 years, and I clearly remember you looking across the table and saying, why don't you do it this winter? And we managed to do it.
And it you know, it really was a challenge because there were many private landowners that you had to contact to make that work.
Yes, there were private landowners. Frankly, in some sections there wasn't even a trail in existence. But thanks to a lot of blood, sweat, and a few tears by a lot of volunteers, we managed to pull it off. And Nicomenon is something that a lot of people that were involved in the founding are very proud of, to see how far it's grown today and what it's spurred. Oh,
it spawned a tremendous, trail development, skiing, biking, and really, in a sense, I think it kind of helped the Iron Ore Heritage Trail, the original concept, get started, and that, of course, took off on its own and did very well as well.
Yes.
I want to talk to you about, you started your career as a CPA, and I think that may have brought you to Marquette County. Is that right?
Yes. When I graduated from Albion, Ernst & Winnie had an office up here, and Paul Makala and Bob Toutant were kind enough to, take some pity on me and offer me a job. And so that's what first got me to Marquette. And through that, I met my wife, Mary, and spent a little over 3 years in the public accounting business, and then left the area to go to graduate school, and then worked for close to a decade with one of the leading Canadian banks in their international banking division.
And you mentioned your wife, and she's very much a partner in your business, isn't she?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
She's the boss.
She's the boss. Well, you carry the title president, but sometimes we never know, I guess. Did you always have the idea that maybe someday you would develop your own business?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And it did start with the building in Marquette, which is still there, which was the Blockbuster.
Correct.
At the time.
Yes. And actually that first building we didn't own.
Okay.
There was a private investor that owned it, but he basically had me do everything from A to Z involved in the development, design, construction, even going so far as arranging his capital, his financing for him. And out of that experience, we opened the Blockbuster store in Marquette, and I realized pretty quickly that my landlord was probably doing better than I was doing,
okay,
operating the store, and he wasn't in there for 60, 70 hours a week.
Right.
So that really triggered our interest in pursuing the real estate development aspect. And then as we opened additional Blockbuster stores, we owned those stores outright ourselves. So that is what really led us into commercial real estate.
And you were clearly in that business at the right time, and apparently got out at the right time too, as far as the Blockbuster business.
Yes, we were fortunate. We exited that business, sold the UP stores back to Blockbuster Corporate in the mid-90s when Blockbuster was at its peak. So We were very fortunate and blessed to be able to do that.
And for the benefit of our audience, the kind of buildings typically you invest in, they might think of strip malls, office buildings with multiple tenants. Is that pretty much what most of the projects are, as well as some hotel projects, I know?
We started out primarily with what is referred to as strip malls, small shopping centers,
Right.
things of that nature, 2, 3, 4, 5 tenants. And as we gained experience and knowledge and some credibility, frankly, we grew from that into having the ability to work with national tenants, national retailers, or people requiring office. One of the areas that we moved into, actually through the renovation of the old, some of the old timers around will remember the old Olson Motors building.
Okay, right.
On West Washington. That's now what we refer to as Liberty Way West. We purchased that building back in the late 90s when it was vacant, former auto dealership, originally built as an auto dealership in the 1920s. We gutted that and turned it into office space. That led us into the office sector.
Okay.
And we today now have a portfolio that's comprised less of retail, probably more of office, what we call mixed use, which might combine office, retail, residential, and of course our hospitality or hotel division is a very large and growing arm.
Okay. I want to find out more about how this all developed after we take a break. Back with more on the Ryan Report in just 2 minutes. Guest this morning is Bob Mahaney, president of Viridia Group, commercial real estate development and hospitality business. Bob, as you get into these projects, there's always, I assume, a certain amount of risk. How do you alleviate that risk, or how do you plan so it's not a risky proposition?
That's a very good question. And every project comes with a certain amount of risk, and hopefully we can identify that risk at the start, at the outset of a project, and strive to mitigate it before we get shovels in the ground. You know, risk can come from a number of areas. There's, you know, what we call entitlement risk, the risk of getting the proper zoning and permits that you need to develop a site in accordance with your plan. There's the risk of financing and capital. We're fortunate here in the UP in that we've got, you know, very strong group of community banks that have been very supportive of us. And then there's always, you know, the market risk. Is the market going to accept the project, whether you're dealing with consumers or seeking out other businesses to be a tenant in that building? And typically, the way we address that is with location and with quality of construction and appearance.
Do you typically have portions of it pre-sold, pre-rented, tenants lined up for some part of it?
Yes. You pretty much have to these days in order to get the financing that you need for a commercial project.
So that also means you have to establish relationships with potential customers, potential clients, particularly on the
Absolutely.
national scene. You have, for example, a Starbucks in one of your
Yes.
operations.
Yeah, we work very hard at trying to build and develop relationships. One of the things that we really end up doing indirectly is almost serving as the Chamber of Commerce, you know, sort of out there advocating for Marquette. One of the things that we found is that when you run raw demographic data, which most of these national retailers do, and they're just looking at raw numbers off the census that the Census Bureau puts out and other private firms, our story doesn't really show up in hard numbers. So we have to get out there and get in front of these people and say, just listen to the story. And if we could deliver you a location, and let's take Marquette, for example, a town that has a very strong regional health care center, a university, and a diversified economy. And if you take US 41, for example, in Marquette Township, you know, 30,000 plus cars a day going by, and you can say, if we could deliver a location that had that, you know, in a trade area of this size, then their ears perk up and they start to listen.
Sure.
We got to get them beyond the raw data. There's a hidden story behind Marquette's economy and its strength.
Okay. We probably don't have time to do justice, but The Liberty Way project is really interesting to me, and I know it's the biggest project you've taken on, and it's apparently working out very well because you're nearing completion and you actually have it fully occupied from what it appears. There was a little change in direction there from the beginning, wasn't there, where you were kind of looking at some mixed development, and now you really have it all filled with tenants, with 3 major players in the game?
Yeah. Liberty Way is a great example where the market really properly dictated what its final use should be. When we first drew up Liberty Way, we thought of our plans called for residential apartments, which now is going to be the Staybridge Suites Hotel and Extended Stay Hotel. The third building, which is going to be occupied by UP Health Plan, was going to be retail on the ground floor and a combination of office and residential as well, potentially. But now that building is going to be occupied 100% by UPHP.
So you're filled and ready to go. What Staybridge Suites, that's going to be your company, and your Verity is operating that?
Yes.
When do you expect to open?
We should be opening in early November, if not sooner.
Really?
Yep.
You were able to construct during the winter, which I'm sure really helped out. But this project, correct me if I'm wrong, it seems like it's been about 2 years from beginning to almost completion. Is that accurate?
We acquired the old Bunny Bread Bakery project. It is. I think back in 2012, basically.
Okay, so it's
2011, 2012. It took a year or two to formulate plans, get everything lined up. And then we broke ground in 2013. We thought it would take us till about 2019 to complete the project. So we're very pleased with the timetable.
Do you have any other big projects you can tell us about coming up?
We're looking at another project I can't give a lot of details on, but it would be in Marquette that we think would be very transformative along the lines of Liberty Way, mixed use. And we hope to be able to be announcing that in the next, probably next 6 months. And then we've also got a few projects outside the area.
And one of the things you attempted to do and did really successfully was to try to extend downtown Marquette by constructing Liberty Way and designing it in such a way that it really fit in with the downtown.
Thank you. Yes, that was one of the objectives of Liberty Way. We felt it could really have a very positive impact on how we define downtown Marquette and expand the opportunities for downtown.
Okay. Still got some more questions to ask. We'll get back to those in a couple of minutes. Back with more after we take this break. And once again. Once again, our guest this morning is Bob Mahaney. Bob, your company is becoming more big time in the hospitality business. What brought you in that direction, and what have been the keys to success in that business?
The key to success in hospitality has definitely been our people. We are so fortunate to have just a great, talented team of people. It's led by Charlie Holsworth. These are all people that are UP natives, and that really makes us especially proud. They basically created systems, processes, procedures, and built a passion for guest service that is as good as what you'll find in the country. If I apologize for sounding as if I'm bragging, but they really do a phenomenal job. It's not because of me. It's their passion for the hospitality business combined with these systems. And so we felt a couple of years ago that there are opportunities. In order to grow hospitality, we're going to have to look outside the UP. And if we could look outside the UP, we could have a UP-based company where we could grow those people even further and give them the chance to compete on the national stage, and they've been able to do that.
Okay. And you've been looking primarily in the west, northwest, mountain west?
Yeah, well, we leapfrogged a few states, but the way we like to describe it is we really want to focus on the northern tier states from Michigan west out to the Rocky Mountains, and our first acquisition outside of Michigan happened to be in Montana. So that's basically the geographic area. Most people are focused on the southeast and the Sun Belt. We're very comfortable in the north.
Okay. Let's switch gears a little bit. You were appointed to the NMU Board of Trustees in 2014. What's been your experience like? What's it like seeing it from the inside, getting to understand the university's problems and issues?
It's been very rewarding and very, very challenging. I think the first thing that if I was surprised by was the commitment of the people of Northern to the university. I mean, we all know that there's a lot of great people at Northern, but their commitment to the university is so strong, and it's something that the university can build off of.
I know one of the big challenges, in fact, the last board meeting, I think the budget came up like $2 million short. You know, as a businessman, how do you look at an issue like that?
The first thing I look at when we have to make budget cuts at Northern is the people that are going to be impacted. It's not fun. I can tell you that no one on the Board of Trustees wants to cut budgets. We are at a phase in Northern's history right now where a lot of innovation and reinvention is underway. It might not be obvious to the public yet, but led by President Erickson and the team at Northern, I think you're going to see a lot of transformative change come about. There's a lot of strategic planning and action that's in the works that is going to result in a lot of new opportunities for Northern, opportunities to reverse the enrollment trend that we're in. You know, right now, Michigan is undergoing one of the severest declines in high school graduation rates in the country, and especially here in the UP. And those are our traditional student bases.
Right. In fact, if you can extend that, I think, to the Midwest, and that the pool of potential graduates that Northern would like to attract has gotten smaller.
Yeah.
So the answer to this is to transform Northern, to make it more attractive for those students? Is that in simple terms?
We need to position Northern to be competitive on a regional basis, and I'm confident that we're going to do that. Northern has a lot of competitive advantages vis-a-vis other universities in our region, and we need to capitalize on those. And I'm confident we're going to do that. And we need to start, you know, one of the challenges that we have, frankly, is down in Lansing, and with the tuition cap structure, it really hinders the board's ability to basically generate the revenues that are needed to reinvest in Northern. So that's something that is a very high priority mission, if you will, for the board.
Okay. What do you feel that you can bring to the Board of Trustees as a businessman with your background?
I think probably just a couple of things off the top of my head. One would be, as a member of the community, someone who's hired and employed Northern grads for 30+ years, and I see the quality of work that they can do, their ability to adapt to a changing world because of their liberal arts education and so forth. I think my experience in business, in budgeting and in finance also adds value at times like these. And just my passion for the community and the university. The future of the UP is closely tied to the future of Northern, in my opinion.
They certainly are very important together. Bob, thanks for coming in. Thanks for your contribution to the community through the Board of Trustees and the Cayman on and other ways too, I know. And congratulations on your continuing success. Hopefully we'll see some new developments coming up from Viridia in the future.
Thank you, Don.
Okay.
It's a pleasure to be here.
I'll have some other thoughts for you when the Ryan Report continues after this break. Well, with TV6 celebrating its 60th anniversary, there were several times this year I've had to dispel the idea that I was here when the station went on the air. When you've been around for a long time, sometimes people make you even older than you are. Actually, I was still in high school, although working in radio, when TV6 first hit the airwaves. However, this month does mark an anniversary for me. It was 51 years ago that this face, or a younger version of this face, first appeared here on TV6. The story I want to share with you this morning has to do with my first assignment here at Channel 6. When I was hired, I was surprised when the station manager told me that I would be doing the news and weather. I was pretty comfortable with the idea of doing the news, but weather? I had never thought of myself as a TV weatherman. Of course, being a TV weatherman was very different in those days. I wasn't a meteorologist like we have today. Didn't have radar, didn't have fancy graphics, didn't have the green screen. We didn't even have a thermometer. Someone once asked me, with that being the case, how did I forecast the weather? I said, we make it up. But that's actually not true. Doing the weather on TV6 in those days meant calling the Weather Bureau every day at 5:15. They would provide all the information I needed, including the details on the national map over the phone. From there, it was a matter of bringing the information to the studio and drawing it on the weather boards to get ready for the report. Here's a picture which kind of shows you what that looked like. You can see it's very different from today. Anyway, when I look back, it actually shows what I looked like back then, not just the weather map, but me as well. Clearly, we've both changed a bit. One of the challenges of doing weather on television is that, unlike the news, much of it is unscripted. You have to have a pretty good idea of what you're going to say before you go on the air. But other than reading the actual forecast, most of it is ad lib. The truth is, once I got accustomed to doing the job, I had a lot of fun with it. I continued to do the weather for about 6 years and chalk it up as one of the highlights of my TV6 career. It's also interesting how the availability of weather information has changed over the years. When I was doing weather on TV, there weren't a lot of sources for information. You could catch an occasional forecast on radio, but there was no weather channel with its continuous forecasts. The internet wasn't around, and there were no cell phones with weather apps providing continuous weather. It's true there are a lot of sources of weather information today, but the TV weatherman is still important. It's really not official unless you know what Carl says. Of course, that wasn't true 51 years ago when this young guy went on the air pretending he really knew something about forecasting the weather. I'll be back in 2 minutes. We have the final day of Olympic coverage on NBC coming up next, so I hope you can stay around for that. Thanks to Bob Mahaney for joining us this morning for some interesting insights into the world of commercial real estate development. Remember, if you miss our show, want to see it again, or recommend it to someone else, it is available on the internet. You'll find it at uppermichigansource.com, the place where you'll also find the latest news, sports, and weather 24 hours a day. Time for us to head out. Thanks so much for joining us this week. I look forward to seeing you again next Sunday morning.